process, and they're using folks like Nance to pursue it. Joining me now is Andy Ngo, the post-millennial editor-at-large and author of Unmasked. He appeared opposite Nance at yesterday's hearing. Also with me is former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker. Chris, let's go to you first. Are you concerned about what is just obviously the politicizing of domestic terror, and where could this all end up leading?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is an area of the law that is easily politicized by the media and politicians because it involves U.S. citizens by definition, and it involves the First Amendment. So there's a temptation here to go after ideas and ideology instead of actions. The law punishes actions or attempts to commit illegal acts or conspiracies, but not simply expressing an opinion. And I think that that's where much of what this is where it's headed based on the hearings that I saw yesterday where they brought in that wingnut. This is why congressional hearings, nobody puts any stock in them. They're not credible.
And Andy, earlier today, you told me on my podcast that the Democrats largely ignored you in this hearing until the end when I think it was Sheila Jackson Lee asked you a question. What happened?
She asked me who are the leaders of Antifa, as if I had ever made that claim. It's as silly of a question as asking who is the leader of the far right. Obviously, there are many different groups autonomously organized and connected by networks that make up Antifa. And as for Mr. Nance, yesterday when I was giving testimony and when he spoke, he kept downplaying all the points I was making about Antifa's violent extremism, in fact, comparing it to unruly Super Bowl revelers. I found those comparisons quite sick. I mean, Antifa's organized violence has led to people being maimed and killed. I myself was beaten and nearly killed in 2019. So we are through the looking glass when the star witness on a hearing on domestic terrorism is somebody who called for a suicide bombing on a Trump tower.
It's shocking. I mean, we keep saying it's shocking, but it gets worse. Something else he said at yesterday's hearing. Watch.
Major violent extremist subclasses include the Ku Klux Klan and white heritage groups, neo-Nazi and fascist international groups, Christian identity movement groups, anti-tax extremists, anti-abortion extremists, anti-immigrant macro-nationalists. The 2016 election of President Donald Trump gave them a tribal chieftain they can all rally behind.
First of all, he used the phrase tribal chieftain. I think that's questionable, misappropriating cultural references. But Chris, so anyone affiliated with conservative pro-life groups, pro-border enforcement groups, anti-tax groups are part of a domestic extremist mob that needs to be surveilled? Really?
Sure, that's a case in point right there. That's how far you can take it. I mean, the FBI has loosely defined four types of extremists, and they involve both far left and far right-wing extremists. You notice his testimony made up several categories on the right wing and talked nothing about the far left-wing extremists. So again, you get to the credibility of these congressional hearings. This witness knows nothing about terrorism, as far as I can tell. And I've experienced and investigated terrorism over my 24 years in the FBI, and domestic terrorism is the most difficult area to investigate, again, because it involves First Amendment rights. You have to walk that balance between ideology and action, and when it transforms into action, that's when it becomes prosecutable and investigated. You can investigate based on that.
Now they're criminalizing thought, Chris. I mean, it's obvious. Right. If you're a Trump supporter and you ever attended a Trump rally and had a good time, you're in the suspect class here. It's so obvious when you go and see that razor wire, which I saw today on Capitol Hill, which is disgusting and an abomination. And then you see this hearing. I mean, they're calling over at MSNBC tonight. One of the hosts there called BLM over the summer a false flag, Andy. So real terror and criminality is blown off as no big deal, false flag. And Furboy and the painted face and all their criminality in Capitol Hill that's a sign of more things to come.
My takeaway from the hearing yesterday is that I'm just really disturbed and scared about American public safety if our lawmakers in DC are getting advice from so-called professionals and experts who view the burning of buildings that are occupied by people, the use of firebombs and homemade explosives as merely civil disobedience.
Yeah, that's civil disobedience. Gentlemen, both of you tonight, thank you so much.